This is Pastor Jeff Chavis. I'm coming to you from a sunny southern Nevada this morning. We're having a beautiful day. I am the pastor of an online church. We call ourselves Church Online, but we spell that uniquely CHRCH because we say all that's missing is you. We are on YouTube and Facebook, and we've got our own website, churchonline.com. But this morning, I want to talk about the rest of the story. Maybe you're old enough to remember that radio personality, Paul Harvey, and he had a daily show, and he talked about the rest of the story. For me, I want us to look at the story of the woman at the well. Probably one of those most famous stories because we love how Jesus talks directly to this woman and reaches out, reaches across cultural divides and different things that we just wouldn't have done with a Samaritan woman. But I want us to look at a different part of that story. I want us to look at what the disciples saw. What did the disciples see as Jesus was sitting there talking to this woman? Because that is the rest of the story and an important part for us. So I'm going to go into John's Gospel, chapter 4, and we'll start in verse 1. I'm not going to read the story with his encounter with the woman. I want us to see what else was going on. Again, the rest of the story. It starts out, therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus had made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself did not baptize, but his disciples, he left Galilee and departed again. He left Judea and departed again to Galilee, but he needed to go through Samaria. That's the first part of the story. Jesus is in the middle of all of this tension, all of the stuff that's happening in ministry. The Pharisees are against him. The people seem to gravitate toward him, but he needs to shift his ministry focus. And the interesting statement, and we usually just read by that one and don't see the implication, but the statement that he needed to go through Samaria. For most people in the first century, if you were Jewish, you knew that there's this great divide between the Jews and the Samaritan people. And to say that Jesus he needed to go through Samaria, you would say, no, he didn't. All he needed to do was go on the other side of the Jordan River, and he would totally avoid Samaria, which was the typical practice of Jews during that first century time. They would totally avoid Samaria. But Jesus needed to go there. And as you look at this story, there's a couple of reasons why he needed to go. Obviously, one was this woman, and Jesus often did that. He would go out of his way for the one, and that's an amazing part of the story. You could also say he needed to go there because there's a whole town that needed him. A whole town full of people. That's the next part of the story, verse 5. So he came to the city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Joseph's well was there, and here's a key. Jesus, therefore, being weary from his journey, sat by the well. It was about the 6th hour. So a key phrase is Jesus has been traveling, and he's weary from the journey. It's important that we understand Jesus was human and Jesus got weary. Notice it didn't say that Jesus got weary from the tension with the Pharisees. He didn't get weary from ministry. He got weary from the day-to-day. He got weary from the journey. Now it tells us that he sent the disciples away. Verse 7, a woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, give me a drink, for his disciples had gone away to the city to buy food. So this is the encounter. And again, I said I'm skipping the encounter, but let's look, where did the disciples go? They go into the city to go buy food. Keep that picture in your mind. Jesus and the disciples traveling along. He takes them right into the heart of Samaria. There would have been some shock and some challenge on their part. There would have been this idea, wow, why do we have to go here? Now Jesus is going to send them into the town. They're going to go face to face with these people who are the Samaritans. Now, he has the encounter with the woman, and like I said, I'm going to jump over that so we can see the rest of the story and turn down to verse 31. So John 4:31. The disciples now come back. Jesus has had this encounter with this woman, an incredible encounter, but then John 4:31 31 through 34. In the meantime, his disciples urged him, saying, Rabbi, eat. They're weary from the journey. He's tired. But he said to them, I have food to eat which you do not know. He makes that statement showing us that sometimes there is food and sometimes there is another kind of food. Of course, his disciples didn't get it, and we love that about them, right? Therefore, the disciples said to one another, has anyone brought him something to eat? And Jesus said, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. This is the rest of the story. Jesus is in a place where he's tired and weary from the journey, not from the ministry, not from the pressures of opposition. No, Jesus is weary from the journey. We need some food here at this point. The disciples come back and they see something going on. They don't know what's happening. Hey, boss, let's eat a little something. No, I'm good. And then he shows them maybe one of the most important things for us to see, maybe this morning. Maybe this is part of your story today. The idea that when we are in a place where we need refreshment, the greatest place of refreshment is not by getting a good night's sleep or eating some food, although those things are necessary. But the really important part is us knowing that there is a different kind of food. There is a different kind of nourishment, and it comes from this ministry. It comes from us reaching out, helping, hurting people. I don't know if you've experienced that, but I definitely have experienced that. There have been times, and I can remember different times in my ministry background where maybe I'm having a challenging day and it's not ministry. I'm just weary from all of the other things that you have to do. But then somebody would come into my office. I would meet somebody walking around something. And then we just have this conversation, this spiritual conversation. Maybe it's even a conversation that leads someone to a commitment for Christ. And that just refreshes you. Again, if you've never experienced it, maybe this is the time. Maybe today is the day we begin to think in a whole different way. There's food, nourishment. There's another kind of food, as Jesus said, to do his work, to do the work of God. The next line, so important in this too. He says, and this is John 4:35. Do you not say there's still 4 months and then comes the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields. They are already white for the harvest. Jesus giving his disciples the encouragement to see their own ministry. Look, we may think, again, in our day and age, in our culture, there's nobody that wants to hear about Jesus. There's nobody that wants to know the story. Oh, but Jesus would say, look, there are people. And if you want to experience that nourishment, if you want to experience this other kind of food that he's talking about, we just look to Jesus. We look to the rest of the story. The rest of the story is us seeing that we can be refreshed if we're tired. We can be brought some encouragement when we encourage others, when we are involved in ministry.